you could speak to him about anything, right? And he was always understanding and straightforward.
It was beyond me as to how he perfectly played the role of a teenager, a mother, a father, a teacher, a psychologist, a mental therapist, but most of all, my best friend. He would always shower me with kisses. Whenever he did this, I'd usually cringe and say, "You love to kissy, man. You just kissed me like a minute ago." But then he'd remind me that there are many children in the world who wish they had a father who showed this type of affection towards them. He has also taught me many critical life lessons and has given me a lot of advice. He has provided me with an infinite amount of love, support, strength, courage, wisdom, each of which altogether shaped me into the person I am today. But most of all, he gave me the greatest gift anyone could give another person. He believed in me.
The sun peeps through the sliver of curtain silhouettes as the lashes flutter in a stretch towards the new day's moon. The paradox of nature's cacophony is interrupted by the mellifluous notes of the stylistics. As the notes waltzed through, the door left ajar for the voice of her father, to waft in like the delectable notes of a cup of Folgers, serenading her by singing, "You are to me the star of my TV show. Then all the world would know how I loved you so." Breakfast was an amalgam of stylistics and shylights, Ken Booth, Alton Ellis, Temptations, Manhattans, Beres Hammond, and truly the list is inexhaustible. It was the true breakfast of champions. To be asked to pen a tribute to a being whose being cannot be encapsulated by the finite construct called language may be the greatest disservice I have ever done to my father. But I must try my best to maneuver within the constraint of our finite beings. And so the title of my tribute to my father is The Art of Being. I surmise that beginnings must have endings, but if I were to say that my being at his ending has not challenged my entire being, I would be truly lying. We are Boynes. Being is supposed to be our forte. So how then, Father, do I continue being? I have ruminated deeply on what would constitute being. And because he won't be able to hear this tribute at this time, my words are for us who have been left behind to be. So, what does it mean to be? What does it mean to be Boyne? Building. My father always had the opportunity to migrate to another country, but his mandate was always to be amongst the minority who stayed to build Jamaica. In fact, two of the other loves of his life, his mother and his sister, migrated to the United States in his early years. To build the Jamaican spirit was a divinely appointed task for him, and I dare say he executed it beyond all expectations. He would often boast, as he did well boast, as you know Jamaicans say, that he has the longest running TV show and that not even Oprah or Larry King could keep up with him. So you know when all 5 prime ministers turn up at Ian Boyne 30th, that their blood bag, they well bust, you know. For weeks, the family could not stop hearing, "I had all 5 prime ministers in one room." The art of being. Dad was a builder. B attitude. Dad was a man who spent a lot of time reading philosophy and theology. Not only because he was a devout Christian, but because he, in very practical terms, understood the importance of the undefeatable mind. and was oftentimes heard to say likability is more important than intellect. He was always concerned about the social deficit rather than the economic deficit, as he understood the importance of the effect of purpose on profit. He was a holistic being. In that regard, therefore, he himself marinated stoicism in the tenets of Christianity, and every morning he would recite his affirmation: "There is nothing that would happen today, Lord, that you and I cannot work out." By exercising his be attitudes, Dad embodied be attitudes. Begotten. For before the foundation of the earth, the Lord chose Ian Boyne and Sharon Boyne to usher into this realm Kelly and Gail Boyne. Some relationships are for a season and a reason. That relationship was for both. In a letter I recently received from Auntie Rosie that was written by my father to his mother in 1984, a mere 1 year after my birth, he was noted to have said and penned in his own handwriting, "Kelly is the greatest blessing, and a very faithful wife, Sharon, is totally devoted to me." Mom, who he affectionately called Tunki, Dad loved you from his own place of love. I had to learn that hard lesson myself, and that is when my healing commenced. I have always said the greatest gift my parents gave me was to introduce me to God. He, the true life giver, shared his glory with my earthly life givers, who both continue to give life to me through the darkest moments of my own being. I, my mother's one coca-full basket, her tubby. I, my father's black swan of an undefeatable mind and spirit, his tubby. Dizzy, of whom I am begotten. Dad, the brother. He was a biological brother and a brother in Christ. Many evenings were spent counseling others, many a sleepless nights, as sleep eluded him when he was riddled with a deep concern for the well-being of others. Best friend. Although I'm sure she was annoyed by him as he sought purposely to annoy the life out of her and purposely poke and provoke her, he was her best friend. You would oftentimes see them snickering to each other, sharing private jokes and private moments, and I knew my father had truly found his friend. Auntie Mar, thank you. Thank you for being my father's best friend. Your loss differs from mine, but I join you at the intersection of pain and hold your hand as we enter on a journey of dinnerless Saturday nights, playless Saturday nights, a duet that was once a trio. But God binds us, and he fills our empty places like the practice of the Japanese who fill broken jars with gold. So let's continue laughing, Auntie Mar, because we have lots to laugh about when we see Dad again. Dad was her best friend. Broker. Some may not know, but Dad was not only a broker, that is, a negotiator in his professional capacity, but he was a broker at home. Many a times he had to broker agreements between Brianna over the purchase of some iPhone, or between Auntie Mar and the children over some differences in opinion. And my dear friends, that took great skill. He was the consummate statesman. To Bree, he was her papa. To Dre, he was his Uncle Ian. Bree, Dre, boy, I don't know what to tell you. But if you need a judge, call me. Brethren. Some of you may have met the ever-charming married man seeking friendship Trevor and may have misunderstood him to be merely my father's driver. What you didn't know is that he was one of my father's closest friends. A recurring subject matter of the bankruptcy of secularism and horse racing in his sermons, by the way, members of the church, a recurring subject matter of men who just love woman. But when a man like my father trusts you with his BMW and his PIN number to his bank card, you know him really trusts you. But beyond that, Dad shared very deep moments with Trev. Whilst traveling in the car to wherever Dad was always late to, Trevor always remarked that he would beat the dashboard when a joke really sweet him. Truth is, Trevor was never Dad's driver. He was a divinely appointed guardian angel for my father and for me, as I affectionately call him, Daddy Trev, even when he tries to temper me by saying, "Calm down, Mildred." Trev, I don't know what your days will be like now, but I'm sorry that you lost your friend. But treasure the moments, Trev, banana lady and all. That's a private joke. And remember, you still have me, your Mildred. Dad was a true brethren. Dad, you said I was the star of your TV show, but the truth is you are the star of my universe. And just for you, I will continue to be. All when I find man and get married, I will always be a Boyne. Men, here. I will stay. Some of you will understand what that means. I have entered a dimension of the art of being. The ceiling of my previous realm has become the foundation of this new transcendence. I've accepted my journey. So my humble request of you who have come to celebrate the life of a great being is that you continue to honor my father's being by living your best life, love in your best way, and laugh from your belly as Dad and I always did. So let me let you in a little secret as I conclude. When Dad was ready to conclude a conversation, he would always say, "All the best, all the best, all the best, all the best." That means they really if you pack up your things, them and go on. All if you just sit on there, ball and sad about life and everything, it's time for him to go read some book, type some article, go upon him phone, something. Well, today, Dad, I don't mean the same thing. But all the best, Dizzy. See you soon. And your Toby will love you forever and a day.
From Margaret. I want to give a portrait of Ian as his wife that will hopefully allow you to see beyond the public life of the intellectual to a human being, a husband. On my religious quest for biblical truth, I met Ian, who was able to answer my philosophical question, what is the purpose of life? He became my best friend, and for the past 10 years, my husband. Ian loved God sincerely. Everything was spiritual to him. Everything pointed to God. A trip to the movies meant commentary, exegesis, and spiritual lessons drawn from the movie, which was discussed on our way home. In all of this, I was an audience of one, was the recipient of his preaching. He loved preaching and discussing philosophy. We've had countless discussions, but sometimes I had to say, "Not tonight, baby, not tonight." On Religious Hard Talk, you get an understanding that he was a pastor. However, he never talked about his views, preferring to let his guests speak about their story, and he be the one asking the questions. But he was intensely religious. His faith meant everything to him, and he tried to be the best husband in the world. There were times when he was upset at something I'd either do or say. He was incredibly forgiving, no matter what I'd done. All it would take was a rub of the head and a smile, and all would be forgiven. His sense of gratitude knew no bounds. One never had to wonder whether or not they were appreciated. The smallest acts of kindness deserved a note or a call to express his love or gratitude. Occasionally, I would take home a slice of pudding for him from work, and every single time he was so gracious, thanking me so effusively, that I would wonder what he would have done if I had brought him the whole pudding rather than just a slice. He is the first person to say that he is responsible for my happiness. and thus ensured he did everything he could, despite my protestations to the contrary, at that belief. On the other hand, he saw himself as responsible for his happiness and was not going to put his happiness in the hands of another. And he really lived this particular philosophy out. He knew how an argument worked. He knew that a soft answer turneth away wrath, grievous words stir up anger. Instead of saying something to escalate a problem, he took responsibility for how he responded, and thereby my response. I think that as a public intellectual, you might get the view that he was boring. I want to say nothing could be further from the truth. We had so much fun together. He had a sense of humor that kept me laughing all the time. He was hilarious. People would often wonder what could keep us laughing as if we were newlyweds. Now, Saturday night was our date night. And this became a ritual for the past 10 years, as we held them as special times. Often he would call from work to say how much he's looking forward to our night out, which could mean dinner, a concert, live music, or a play. He would often say that, I'm the only woman in Jamaica whose husband takes her out every single week. He loved oldies music. He knew every oldies song and the artist from the 50s through the 80s and who sang it. He would sing at the top of his voice, often just adding his own words if he didn't remember the lyrics. I can almost hear him singing, Margaret, oh Margaret, as his long strides pounded on the pavement towards our front door, expecting him to enter as he comes home from work. But now, there's just silence. And I have to accept he's no longer there. Ian was compassionate. He could cry easily, oftentimes touched by the sufferings of the poor and the failings of those he loved who were members of his congregation. One of Ian's favorite Bible passages was Matthew 13, 45 to 46. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. Ian had found his treasure and his pearl of great price. It was what he lived for. This is why his last words spoken to me was, I'm happy. I'm at peace. I'm ready. Everything will be all right, baby. I'm going to miss him, plain and simple. I can only go off memories. But I'm only happy that I have had some great memories with Ian. I love you, Ian Boyne. Totally irreplaceable.
I met him from I was in primary school. Always had my eyes on him. Always outstanding, always very charismatic. Always had people around him. He was a leader in his own right. And then on the blessed day, we became one. I was so proud of him. Handsome and debonair. He was always dressed in the 70s style, and I always used to laugh at him. His clothes I always thought would be attracted by bees. He wore his pants on his hips with thick platform boots. Those were the days of the 70s. But it's with a heavy heart that I say this. To the dearest, my dearest, first love, Ian, rest in peace. You strove for excellence. You lived by the code that you learned through the Bible. And with the writings of Herbert W. Armstrong, the 7 laws of success, you lived your life and you breathed your life on these principles. Also on the positive thinking written by Norman Vincent Peale.
Born Ian Anthony Boyne on March 13, 1957, to Lionel Alphonsa Boyne and Ivy Mae Boyne. Ian was the first Shaggy I knew. before Shaggy the singer. He was given the name by our brother Owen because his hair was thick and wavy. Ian and I were the closest because we were closer in age. We had a unique connection. We didn't have to communicate with words. Just a look and we knew what each of us was thinking. Ian was never a fighter. Physical, that is. He fought with words and his pen. I was always his defender. Whenever anyone attacked him, I was there to jump on them, scratch their faces, and kick and bite them. Then Ian and I would walk away, very happy. In 1967, May the 6th, our father passed away. This was a devastating time for us, but more so for Ian, because our father was his life. Ian wouldn't go to sleep at night unless our father was home from his shop. He was a merchant tailor who, with a partner, had a tailoring business on Charles Street and Orange Street, downtown Kingston. Our mother thought Ian would not survive his death, but being the survivor that Ian was, Ian turned his affection to our mother. A few weeks after our father's death, Ian called a meeting with our mother. In the meeting, he announced that he was now the man in charge because our father was no longer there. He also announced to our mother that he would take up the responsibility that our father had. He would be our protector, my protector and my mom's protector. Then he told her that he would not call her mommy or mom anymore, that from now on, from that day forward, he would call her V, shortened for Ivy, and that's the name our father called her. So from that day forth, Ian called our mother V. He never went said mommy. And he took his responsibility very seriously. So much so that if any of my father's friends would come to visit, specifically male friends, and if they overstayed, and if like 9 o'clock came and the person didn't seem like they're ready to leave, Ian would get the padlock, he would come out and he would announce that it's time for us to go to bed, so the person would have to leave. And he would stand there with the padlock looking at the person until they would say good night. Then he would chain the gate and my mom, myself, and Ian would proceed to go to bed. When our mother migrated to the U.S., we were left on our own. Ian became the father, because if he said I could not go somewhere, I respected him that much that I would not even venture to fight him on it. He would be firm, and I would just have to listen. He was always an A student, but he was very disenchanted with all the other rigmarole, of the different subjects and just unnecessary things he thought that he had to do. So he dropped out of school. My mother was livid. And I wrote to her and told her, don't worry, because Ian has a plan. He knows what he's going to do, what he has in mind. And he enrolled in corresponding courses, and he just proceeded to excel at his writing. At one point, people thought we were wife and husband because they never saw any parents, and we were very mature for our age. But through it all, Ian was very lonely because he missed our mother. So he would cry, and he wrote to her. I remember one particular letter he wrote to her saying that he doesn't care if we would starve. He wanted her to come back home. because he missed her that much. But and I, being the bold one and the brave one, said to him, "Are you crazy, boy? You don't want to have nice clothes and nice things?" So that's the way, you know, I covered my feeling, and Ian was the one who showed emotion, and I was the tough one, which it should have been the other way around. But Ian was the first male that I saw who cried, and so he taught me that men do cry. He was also the person who taught me the love of reading, because I did not like English, and he would give me articles to read. And not only did he give them to me to read, but he would ask me questions. And so if I could not answer the questions, he would send me back to reread the article and then come back to him and he would quiz me. So he was the one who taught me the love of reading and the love of English, the English language. My brother, I will miss you dearly. Our parents, Lionel and Ivy, would be extremely proud of him. Our mother's prophecy came true. Ian became a minister, and he was very famous. Unfortunately, she did not live to see that, but she did prophesy it. I can see her smiling at him now and rubbing his head, and that's what he loved. He loved when she rubbed his head.
Giving a tribute to my cousin Ian is an honor that I don't take lightly, given the caliber of the man. Since his passing on December 18, and since that time, the newspapers, the social media have been filled with conversations about Ian. You see, Ian cast a long shadow, and everyone in the Boyne family knows what I'm saying, because for much of my life, whenever people asked me of my name, and I told them, they would look up quizzically and they would say, "You is related to Ian Boyne?" So after the millionth time of telling people that, yes, we were first cousins, I got tired. And I would reply, no, Ian is related to me. But we in the family knew of Ian's popularity, but the extent of the outpouring of the grief was very touching and surprising, certainly to me. And I think from my conversations with Ian in the hospital, that it also surprised him also to an extent. And the number of people who have said, young people, that they grew up watching him on profile every Sunday afternoon for all of their life. He was part of their world. So Ian cast a long shadow. I didn't grow up with Ian, and we had an 8-year age difference. And when I got to start to really know Ian, he was already established in his career at AP and JIS. He was a family man. This was before profile. And Kelly was just about a year and a half, 2 years old. But the man that I knew, that I think the family knew, was similar to the personality many see on TV. The same inquisitive, intelligent, impartial, yet passionate man. Logical, witty, philosophical, persistent, passionate, amiable, humorous, that loud, booming laughter. A man with simple tastes. He was eclectic, or should I say, eccentric. His aversion to flying and driving and traveling were well known. He made public his love of music, his deep appreciation for reggae, roots reggae, also dancehall. But I think Ian had a love for a story, and his interest in you and everyone he met was deep. He believed everyone had a story to tell. So even at family gatherings, although Ian came late to many of them, he wouldn't speak much of himself. He preferred hearing about you, your exploits, your viewpoints, your story, your profile. And he listened, he really listened, almost as if no one else was in the room as he listened to what you had to say. And I found that fascinating about my cousin, as so many others with lesser accomplishments cannot stop from bending your ear with tales of their greatness. but he thrived quietly learning about others. And the love of his books took his imagination to places he had never seen since he was an adventurous, to intellectual pinnacles we mere mortals may never see. And in this world that he lived, he was king. He was a private man. He kept his thoughts to himself, but he would refine research and review so that his written commentaries finally reveal what he was thinking. And that's why I think the better of his two books is Ideas Matter. Ian cast a long shadow, but he was also mischievous. You could see it when he had that twinkle in his eye, or when you said something and he would say, "Oh," and then he would prod you to say more. But from years ago, I could see that the real special twinkle in his eye was a little girl named Kelly. Whenever he spoke of Kelly, and I really saw it when he was in the hospital and Kelly was attending to him. Kelly, surely you were tenderly loved, and you are lucky to be a recipient of that love. And he lives in you, and he lives also on in Margaret and Andre, Brianna, and the family. As we have heard, his actions were deeply influenced and dictated by his faith in God, although many times he didn't speak much of his faith. I went to hear him a few times preach, and it was obvious that his deep spiritual beliefs permeated and tempered his writings, his conversations, how he'd frame his questions as much as his readings and his logic. And that's why he could write for prime ministers from both sides of the divide. And who else could command a picture of himself with every living prime minister? He had the ear of the mighty as well as the lowly. Ian cast a long shadow. And when I looked in his eyes in the hospital, I realized that Ian had lost the fear of death, and he truly appreciated the gift of life. He could now testify and tell his own story for a change, not someone else's story. Yes, he told his profile story in his last days. And this, perhaps, I think, is the best story of the 30 years that Profile was on television. This is the last profile, Ian's profile. And he was given the strength to tell his story before he launched off into eternity. King Hezekiah didn't do so well with his second chance. He squandered it. But Ian, no. He had 1 week, and he used that week well. Ian cast a long shadow.